Hello, Packers fans, and welcome into PackersNews.com. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined by Tom Silverstein. Tom, thank you for joining me again today. Actually, I think this is the first time we've had you this week.
Yeah, I'm a regular Friday visitor.
I don't know how you got out of it earlier this week, but good job, buddy. Good job.
Thanks.
Someone else that came back today was Aaron Rodgers. He was back out at practice. It wasn't much that we got to see during the media viewing period, but what we did get to see, he was a participant. It's the first time we've seen him back out there since November 1st, I believe. So that's a good, let's see, almost 3 weeks of no practice. He was moving around today. He was tossing passes. How important is it just to have had him back out there from a physical standpoint?
Yeah, well, I think they needed him out there. Friday isn't a heavy day, but they work on 2 minute and they do some red zone, I think, and or maybe red zone's Thursday or 2 minutes Thursday, I forget. But either way, they're working on some of their packages, and it's not in pads, but it's really just a chance for them to kind of refine everything and make sure they're where they want to be. And I think it's also a good chance for some of the players to get back to feeling what having Rodgers under center is like, because mostly it's been Jordan Love. And, while he's running the same system, it's just like having a different point guard out there running the system. So I think it was good for them to have him out there today.
Yeah, Patrick Taylor talked about the other day what it was like just to step into the huddle with him for the first time, because that's something they hadn't really been able to do at practice for the past couple of weeks. Matt LaFleur had mentioned last week or after the Seahawks game that sometimes, the only thing that was really different in terms of not having him there was that there's usually a certain set of plays, a package of plays that they have for a certain opponent that they couldn't really run because they weren't able to rep those in practice with Rodgers. So I asked him today, like, were you able to do that this week and rep your package for the Vikings? And he said, everything this week has been normal other than him not being physically at practice on Wednesday and Thursday. So we'll see if that looks different on Sunday now that he has been at least back in the building and he was on the field today. Do you anticipate Sunday looking more like what we would imagine a game plan built around Aaron Rodgers would look like?
Maybe. I still think there'll be some rust that he's got to continue to shake off. And I sort of feel like, LaFleur sacrificed time this week for rest time to make sure his players' legs were fresh. And that could play a part in how much they actually put into the offense. But, I think they will look a little bit better than what they did with Rodgers just there for one day, basically a walkthrough. Today they get a little bit more practice time, so they should be a little bit more on time.
Sorry, I was trying to put this over both of us. He was, as we said, back out there today. We see him there on the far side of the field. And like we mentioned, just getting time with the guys can make the biggest difference. And so, Tom, I just wanted to kind of ask you as well, do we see more – sorry, I'm trying to unmute you. Do we see more of the tight end involvement this week, the running back involvement? Eric Stokes back out there again today as well. He has been a full participant all week, so we imagine he'll be fine, just like he was against the Seahawks. Do we see more tight end involvement? Do we see more passes to the running backs out of the backfield? Just, sort of those things that can be built with chemistry that he maybe has not had with them the past couple of weeks.
Could be. I mean, you could see a little more emphasis on the run game. We could see a little more emphasis on the screen game. They seem to enjoy that last week against Seattle. But I really think Matt LaFleur, when he goes into a game, he picks out what he thinks is going to work against the opposition. And I think he has confidence that, if he's calling on the wide receivers, he's calling on the wide receivers. Calling on the tight ends to be a part, then he's confident in them. And same with the running backs. I think there will be maybe a little more emphasis on two tight ends just because Alan Lazard doesn't sound like he's going to play, and they may need a little bit more blocking.
Mhm.
But I don't know. It's really how LaFleur defines what will work against Minnesota. And uh, again, that's going to change as the game goes on, too, because you never know what Mike Zimmer's drawn up, and they'll have to do some adjusting during the game. So that's where having Rodgers is really critical, is that your game plan might get thrown out the window, or at least part of it,
Mhm.
in the early get going if the Vikings throw like a curveball in terms of how they play it.
We're going to get to your questions here in just a minute, so continue to drop those in the comments. We'll bring those up. Tom, I know that we talked about this some on the Green 19 podcast this week, but just to bring it up again here, what do you see as the key matchup here this week? Is it Dalvin Cook against this front seven? Is it these safeties against Justin Jefferson? Is it Aaron Rodgers against Mike Zimmer? What is going to be the key matchup to this game?
I sort of feel like it'll be the Vikings offensive line against the Packers defensive line. I think the Packers have to keep Minnesota from getting real comfortable, getting Cousins in the pocket, having him be able to do a lot of play action off of Dalvin Cook. And I think there's some places that the Packers can win on the line of scrimmage on defense, and they need to do that. I mean, they can't just talk about it. They need to do it. They need to keep consistent pressure up the middle and clog up Dalvin Cook. And then the rest of it will kind of take care of itself. But if you don't have that, if you're not stout on the line, if you're not stopping Dalvin Cook, or at least holding him, then you're probably going to wind up giving up a lot of yards. And I think that's where this game will kind of hinge upon.
I covered Dalvin Cook in recruiting, which makes me feel old. And he has been that way from the moment he first stepped onto a football field. It's not a matter of stopping him. It's just a matter of containing him as much as possible, because he can break a game wide open. We do have a couple of questions. This has been the $60,000 question every day of the week, it seems. Any word on when to expect Bach, Z. Smith, or Jair to be back playing? What are we hearing today that might have been different from – have we heard anything new, basically?
No, not really. I mean, I think you can assume that if probably all three of those guys, if they come back, it would be after the bye week. Bakhtiar is probably the closest, but we really don't know what happened in terms of if there was a setback, or if they, felt there was something where they needed to shut him down for a little bit. I don't know if, right now there's no indication that he won't come back, but it's one of those situations where, they're just kind of playing it to see how the knee is, I guess. And Jair and Zadarius Smith are, I mean, I don't think either one of those is close. Neither one has practiced. Neither one has, begun the window in which they can start to practice as injured reserve guys. So I don't think anything happens with them until after the bye week. And even then, I can't predict when that would be.
David Bakhtiari, for what it's worth, is officially ruled out now for Sunday's game. He did not practice one day this week. We didn't even see him out on the field, or I think he was out there yesterday, maybe stretching or in the pit. Someone said, but
maybe he was. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but he wasn't out there today. Aaron Jones, unsurprisingly, officially ruled out, as is Malik Taylor. That one might be the more interesting of those that are ruled out, because he returns kicks. And Matt LaFleur was asked today, if Malik Taylor can't go, which we now know he won't be able to, who's going to return kicks? And he said, you want me to tell you who's going to return kicks for us? Well, yeah, but he didn't. He said everyone, including apparently the Minnesota Vikings, will find out on Sunday. Is that something you trust Amari Rodgers with? Do you move him over from? Do you keep him on punt and do kick as well? Or is there someone else?
I think it'll be Patrick Taylor.
Okay.
That's my guess, is that they'll use him. He's a good prospect for kick returns, big, strong. He's not a guy who's going to dance around. He's going to take it right up the middle. And so I would guess that they'll roll with him. They have to be really convinced he can field it and can hang on to it. But they used him in the preseason on kickoff returns, and he practices it during the year. So that would be my best guess on it.
While we're talking about special teams, Mason Crosby met with the media today for the first time in, I think, a few weeks, and basically took the blame for everything that's gone wrong on the field goals the past few weeks and took it all on his shoulders. I want to get your opinion on this. I feel like in the hierarchy of people that are in the wrong here, he would be third or fourth. Was that just a veteran move taking the blame, or is he more to blame than we realize?
I think it was both. I think it was a veteran move for him to not blame anybody and to say, it's just up to him to make the kicks. And I think he's starting to realize that, and maybe, I think kickers get in this way where they really feel they have to have the ball in a certain way in order to be successful. It's, sort of like golfers. They got to have the same swing and the ball in the same position. And, I think sometimes kickers get a little bit too caught up in that. And I think now he understands that, hey, just put it through any way you can. And it's like Mason Crosby not to blame anybody. That's the way he's been his entire career. And he's not at this point going to start throwing guys, under the wheels. He's got more class than that. But it's certainly not been all his fault. But I think he's got to take the sort of the approach that, hey, okay, so the snap's not going to be perfect. Just get it through the uprights one way or another.
Yeah. He pointed out, and he was not blaming anyone, but he pointed out that they brought in a new long snapper 3 weeks ago. So this is still a unit that is figuring each other out. They have not brought in a new running back. And that's something that Mike asked, do you think the Packers might bring in a vet running back? And then John got in a little bit more specific. Why did we not sign Kerryon Johnson when we brought him in for a visit? Do you have any insight into that?
I think they like Patrick Taylor, and I think that Aaron Jones isn't going to be out that long. I think they feel like Aaron Jones can be back after the bye. And so they need to just get through 2 weeks. And I really, first of all, Kerryon Johnson, I don't know what he looked like. He could have been out of shape, in shape. Nobody else is signing him. So he must not be just, people aren't lining up to sign him. So they were just taking a look. I just think that they can get through this with 2. And if they need to they added a guy on the practice squad who they obviously thought was better than Kerryon Johnson. So I think they're okay there. And if they suffer another injury, then they got to do something. But they just got to get through these 2 weeks, because I think Aaron Jones will be back after the bye.
John Wayne Everett. What a great name. Good name, John Wayne. He asked, who is new to the team this week that came onto the practice squad that might start? Would Tipa start?
No. It would be Jonathan Garvin and Preston Smith. So no, he'll be in a reserve role. I'm sure they will move him around. I also think they'll bring up Ladarius Hamilton. He'd be one of the guys they bring up from the practice squad, a 1 game. I'm pretty sure he's still eligible for that because he's played. And, he's already played in regular season games, and Tipa hasn't. So I would think it would be kind of a combination of those 2 guys playing on the edge, but mostly, in a very backup role. And I do think Rashawn Gary's going to play. I think they're going to play him, and I think it'll be on third downs. I could be wrong. They could be just trying to throw the Vikings a curveball by saying, he's questionable.
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised if he's out there.
He was out of practice today without any sort of noticeable protective gear on. So we'll see. We did talk to Tipa today for the first time, and he said something really interesting that you don't hear a lot of guys say. Usually when you hear guys get called up from the practice squad, they're like, oh, this is what I've been working for. This is what I've been waiting for. I asked him what was different this week, and he said, to be honest, I tried to get reps back on the practice squad. He really, really enjoys it, and here's why. It sort of made sense. Game planning wise, he needed to be practicing with the active players. But he said he learns so much being on the practice squad because he's going against Aaron Rodgers. And he was like, I learned so much more than I could on the other side of the roster just because I'm the one going up against Aaron Rodgers every day. And Aaron Rodgers gave him credit after the Bears game. He said, I knew what to do there because Tipa gives me that look in practice. And I asked him today, what's something that Aaron Rodgers has taught you? And he said how to listen. He said his cadence messes me up all the time, which is something that he's known for. He said his cadence messes me up, and he said, and he always knows what I'm doing, even if I think he doesn't. And so it's forced him to really up his game just to be able to give Rodgers something to match. Again, he needed to be with the active guys since he is playing this week just for game planning purposes. But, I mean, we never really think about that aspect of it. Don't you agree, Tom, that on the practice squad, they are going up against some of the best, and especially here in Green Bay, they're going against one of, if not the best quarterbacks of their time.
Oh, yeah. And it's just from a competitive standpoint, too. It brings out the juices. I mean, Aaron Rodgers talked about how during his years playing on the scout team, how much that meant to him and how excited they got when they were able to beat the defense. And, I can think of guys who've been on scout teams who've, that's how they built their reputation was all of a sudden you see them matched against starters and they're playing as good as the starter or like a starter. And that's how they get noticed. So I think the biggest thing that's held Tipa back is his size. I think they'd be nervous to put him in a run situation. I think he's probably more of a third down specialist, pass rusher, and they'll probably try to get him in on some of those situations. But, he's like 229 pounds. And so he's still building his body. And, it could be that he needs another off season to really get it. But from everything everybody says, and I remember this from training camp, he was getting to the quarterback a lot. So I'm kind of interested to see if they give him some third downs to rush the passer.
I'm about to give you some news then. You'll appreciate this. And I just double checked my transcript to make sure I was quoting him correctly. He knew his size was a problem and knew he needed to put on weight. And he said he is now up to 240.
240. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Unless he misspoke, but he said, yeah.
So, yeah, that I remember Mike Smith talking about that in training camp, talking about how he's got to keep building size and strength. And, there'll come a point maybe where he does have that and they feel comfortable playing him. They didn't, they went after Ladarius Hamilton, took him off Tampa Bay's practice squad before they signed, ahead of Tipa. So they must have had some reservations, but, you never know. A guy might surprise you. Got to give him a chance.
This defense has been somewhat of a surprise, I guess. Well, not anymore. At this point, we expect it. But Larry asked, do we think that they'll be able to hold the Vikings down enough to win the game? A-Rod not practicing. We kind of discussed that already. But I know that you have some reservations. Is that the right word? And Larry said earlier, this game scares me a little bit. I know you've been a little bit more on the bandwagon of this could be a trap game than maybe I have been. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, not so much a trap game because I think Minnesota is playing good football, and I think they've had some tough breaks. Aside from the embarrassing Baltimore loss, they've just been competitive. They've lost some tough games. They've had some injuries. They lost their best, just like the Packers, they lost their best pass rusher. They've been without their nose tackle for 5 games. They've been without that's Michael Pierce. They've been without Anthony Barr. They're really excellent inside outside linebacker who's been out for 5 weeks. They've been without Harrison Smith, their fine safety, for a couple of weeks. So I think they're just starting to meld together now, and they could be a factor. They could be a playoff team. So this will be a really good test. And anybody who's ever covered the Packers back to the days of the Metrodome knows that Minnesota can just be an absolute house of horrors for the Packers. And I don't know if it will be this weekend, but I think it's going to be really a good game.
Mm-hmm. Green Bay is currently 3.5 games ahead in the division, looking to increase that again this weekend. We will be there for you through it all. Tom, Pete, Ryan, I will all be in Minneapolis this weekend to keep you updated with everything going on with the Green Bay Packers versus the Minnesota Vikings. Between now and then, stay tuned to PackersNews.com for complete coverage as the Packers get ready to take on the Vikings. Thanks so much, Spoon. We'll see everyone else.